So we have explored how we can control for variances in our research design. So now let's move on to the types of research design. Okay, the types of research based on the purpose and the different types of designs that we could adopt. If we look at research based on what we want to achieve, what is the purpose of the research, we can look at 4 different classifications. But this is not about being exhaustive now. I'm just trying to give you a big background or a kind of big brief overview of the kind of research that you can do based on the purpose. Definitely what I mean there is what you want to achieve. You can do a basic research in which you are just trying to present a kind of descriptive overview of what is going on. So the idea there is to conduct the research for the sake of increasing or advancing knowledge about a particular area. So it's descriptive in nature, and it's about trying to explain what is going on, to understand and explain what is going on. Then we have applied research, where you provide information that can be used in an effort to help understand and control the environment. So it is more or less a kind of prescriptive exercise. So you are carrying research out in order to provide solutions to a problem. So the investigation for applied research is about solving a problem. So you must provide solution. Basic research, you are providing an understanding and explanation of what is going on. Applied research, you are trying to provide solutions based on proper research. So, for example, trying to develop the vaccines and things like that, right there and then we are doing applied research. Basic research, when we are trying to understand the COVID-19 virus, how it's evolving, how it's spread and things like that, that is basic research. We are trying to understand how it behaves. Evaluation research, you are looking at the process and you are looking at the outcome. How has this process produced these outcomes? So the idea around that, overarching idea there, is to be able to look at which one is much effective. This produced this result, this produced this result, this process produced this result, this process produced this result. Which one is better out of these different? So we can do this. This is an evaluation research. Then we have the action research, which is conducted within an organization or community with the involvement of the researcher in gathering the data and studying themselves. So you as a researcher, you are immersed in the whole process so as to understand what is going on and feel what is being felt within that environment and come up with suggestions and understanding about what is actually taking place. So remember, this is not an exhaustive list, it's just to give you an idea of the common types of research based on the purpose. Now, if we look at basic designs, what are the basic research designs that we could have? We have the experimental design, we have the quasi-experimental design, and the non-experimental design, under which we have the ex post facto or the correlational studies. So I will implore you to read more about these different categories, but I will focus on few of them, explain a little bit more about them as we proceed. Remember, basic research design could be experimental, quasi-experimental, or non-experimental. If we talk about other ones that we could look at, we have the descriptive design with the aim to observe and describe. Okay, if you're doing a descriptive design, if you adopt a descriptive design, your aim is basically to observe and describe. You are not looking to influence anything, you are just looking at what is going on and describe what you can see. The great wildlife journalist, documentary maker, David Attenborough, uses this approach. A lot of works in the wildlife area, you do the descriptive design, whereby you look at what is going on, you just observe and report, describe what you're seeing. Surveys is also a descriptive design. Case studies are also example of descriptive design. Then we have the correlational design, where the aim there is to predict whether two or more variables are associated or related. Okay, you can use, under this design, we have the case control study, whereby you compare groups with certain condition against group without that particular condition. So you control for that case. So you compare group with certain condition against group without that condition. So the group without that condition is the control group, and the group with the condition is the case group. Then we have the observational study. You observe a phenomenon that is already on the way, and you make inferences. So we could look at corruption prosecution across the country, or the execution of the face masks campaign, that people should wear face masks. We may want to study it and see how people are adopting this by looking at how they're doing it at different places, and see how this is taking place and what are the things that makes it happen this way. Why is there any relationship between people wearing masks in this place and people not wearing masks? What are the things that makes people kind of wear masks? So you can have a cohort study in which you study a group with certain traits over time. So you start, let's say, one of the big maybe I'll come into that example later. Let me pick another example whereby you look at, for example, let's say student entering into their first year of the university. You can start studying them from their first year till they graduate. The common trait now is they are all first year student, maybe of certain age, and you start studying them, their performances, their how they are changing, how they are evolving within the system, the academic system, and look through them throughout their stay in school. So you could pick a group and study them. That is a cohort study. And then we have the longitudinal study. Basically, you study things over time. So if we take this group and also study them over time, and we are taking note of certain things, this could be a longitudinal study, like one of the big longitudinal study that was carried out, I think, in the UK, where they study kids from their family. They study their family background from when they were born till some of the, I think the study is still ongoing right now, where they're studying them even after they have given birth, how they have to look at their social mobility, their health, and so on. So we could look at that over a long period of time. So that combined a cohort and a longitudinal study. So remember, you could have a mixed design whereby you pick some aspects may take from descriptive and some aspect may take from correlational design. Then we have the cross-sectional, whereby you take a snapshot in time and you use that to explain what is going on with the population. So most of the time you will be involved in doing this. So when you do your survey and you are taking you are basically taking a snapshot in time, which is a cross-sectional design. Now, if we look at the quasi-experimental design, here your interest is to determine the cause. What causes this to happen? So we could have an experimental design whereby you are not doing your experiment in the laboratory or in the greenhouse. You are actually growing in the field. So in the field now, you cannot control for everything, but you can try as much as possible to control for things that it's possible to control for. Okay, so you can look at the soil and make sure that the soil is similar. Okay, so you grow on the same type of soil, but the weather and so many things, depending on how big the field is, the situation might change even within an area. Then we have another design within this semi-experimental design. So semi-experimental design is a broader group, and quasi-experimental design is within this semi-experimental design. If you have a quasi-experimental design, you can select a group to test a variable on. So no random pre-selection before the process. So you just select the group and you go out, you test a particular variable on them. So by selecting the group, now you are not just saying, you are trying to have a little bit of control. So you are not doing a random selection. So by selecting a particular group, now you are trying to introduce a bit of control into the system, because remember, if it is experimental, you exhibit a little bit of control over what goes on. So if it is semi-experimental, you don't have full control. If it's full experimental, you have full control of what is going on. You can manipulate the system, the environment, as you deem it fit. We have also the twin studies, whereby you compare identical twins with non-identical twins. So they use this in the medical field, whereby they want to test maybe drugs or treatment and so on, or conditions, to see how it affects. So identical twins, we have similar genes and things like that, and the non-identical twins, they are kind of different. So it's easy to look at how the situation or the dependent by changing the independent variables, you want to see how the dependent variable that you are going to be measuring will change across these two groups. So you are using one group to control for the other group. So now if we move on to the experimental design, you are still trying to find causes. So through experimental design, you want to prove or disprove what you are looking at, or the association or the differences, by using random assignment. Okay, so which means your groups or your samples, the people, the subjects you are going to take, you are going to randomly select them. Okay, but you are going to control for the entire system. You are going to have a control over the entire system. So which means if you are going to do, for example, remember our maize or the plant and the fertilizer application, which means you select the seed randomly from the same batch or variety, and then you make sure you control the system in terms of what the crops are going to be exposed to during their growth stage. You make sure that the control group would not get the treatment, while the test group will get the treatment, and this treatment can also be varied and then replicated, so that you can be sure that the differences you are seeing is not due to random chance, it is as a result of real differences. So we also have the double-blind experiment. This is usually also in the medical field. Okay, whereby the person even administering the test does not know whether which group the subject belongs to, because that way you can control for researcher being unnecessarily influencing the experiment. Okay, so these are some examples of experimental design.